Alright, what's up guys? It is Mr. Enchanted and we just got back from the Lorcana DLC in Seattle and your boy actually made day 2, as you can see by this star right here. I don't know if you can see that. So if you make day 2, they put this little star on your competitor badge. And so we ended up making top 64, we got the Let It Go, we got the Cinderella, and we finished 49th. So I just wanted to quickly go over my deck list, the reasoning for the colors, the cards, and the choices that I made for my deck, which did make top cut and top 64. So let's just get straight into it. And this is it. So I played a non-traditional, little bizarre Emerald Steel deck, and we ran 4 Cursed Merfolk, 4 of the 1-drop Diablo, 4 of the 1-drop Robin Hood, 4 Ursula Deceivers, 4 of my boy Doc, which is the discard your hand, draw 2 cards. And then we also had 4 Smees, 4 Big Diablos, 4 Ursula Deceiver of All, 4 Pete's, of course, 2 Green Tinkerbells, which is the one that gives evasive, 4 Big Robin Hoods, 4 Sudden Chills, 2 Babooms, 4 Storms, 2 Smash, 4 Strength, and 2 Hidden Cove. Now, this deck seems a little bizarre, seems a little strange. It's not your typical Emerald Steel that you saw at the DLCs that was popularized by Zan with the whole Hypnotize, Prince John, Muses, Tinkerbell lines. And so, originally, I was sort of playing that kind of green steel deck, but for whatever reason, I felt that going towards or shifting towards a deck that was lower to the floor would be a lot better of an option. And the reason for this was that, as everyone expected, we all assumed that red-blue is going to have the biggest market share or the biggest percentage of the decks represented at the DLC. And so from my point of view, I was thinking, maybe 20% red-blue, and then I was thinking like 15% green-steel in terms of the overall decks. And obviously, green steel ended up being everywhere. And so the way that this deck came together was on the Friday with the side events, the day before the main event, where I registered, I played, and I saw green steel literally everywhere. I played against it. I saw green steel on my left, saw green steel on my right. I was asking a bunch of my friends who were at the event what they were playing and what they were seeing, and everyone was just facing green steel everywhere. And so this got me thinking, man, my 15% prediction of green steel in the main event is probably going to be wrong or way too low. And so I was a little worried about that. And I kind of got trounced by the whole green steel decks. And originally in my list, I ran the Cursed Merfolk Flynn Rider line. And the reason for this is because if you expect red-blue to be the most popular deck in the meta at a tournament, the whole Merfolk on 1, Flynn Rider on 2 absolutely destroys the Sapphire decks. So, I don't know, from my point of view, this is just an easy choice to make. But I obviously didn't want to overreact on the Friday because of the absence of red-blue. I just didn't see it anywhere. And I come from Toronto, and there's a lot of really good Toronto Lorcana players. And so a lot of my buddies were there, and I was asking around, what were they seeing? What were they playing? And no one was mentioning Ruby Sapphire at all. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to overreact completely and just trash my whole deck and bring a brand new deck. But this sort of convinced me to move off of the Flynn Rider line and that maybe I should focus more on the green steel matchup. And so this is where this kind of deck came together. Now, originally, as you can see in the actions, I did play 2 Babooms and 2 Smashes. Now, the big reason for this is that if your opponent shifts Diablo on 2, you can just Baboom them down for 2 and you're good. But most green steel players now run the Hidden Cove, and so as you know, you shift Diablo, put him in the Cove, and now he's a 3/3 body. And that's where Smash comes into play. Now, also, Smash was really good for me in this tournament, as it also took out Ursula Deceiver of Alls. It took out Ariels, it took out Prince Naveen's, Grandma Tala's, like a lot of really important 3 willpower characters. Smash was able to just completely take them out. And one of the great things about Smash is that it's not a song, which seems kind of bad because you can't sing it, but that makes it immune to Ursula Deceiver. And so many times when you're facing green steel, they'll play Ursula on 2, they'll get rid of your Storm, they'll get rid of your Strength, but they can't get rid of your Smash. And so this made them moving their Diablo to the Cove a little bit awkward. It also made it tough for them to allow the Ursula Deceiver of All, the 2/3/3 drop, to survive one turn. And so I went with the 2/2 split of Tuba Boom to Smash. So I sort of saw it as 4 action cards taken up in my deck, and I just split it down the middle. Now the rest of the songs are pretty simple: 4 Sudden Chill, 4 Storm, and 4 Strength. The Storm and the Strength are not, you don't really need to explain those, but the Sudden Chill seems a little out of place because I didn't run the Prince John Hypnotize discard line, as discard was the Prince John draw engine. And so the idea that I had with this deck is that I would try to bait my opponents with the Cursed Merfolk into using some of their removal. So say, for example, against the Ruby decks, if they had to use a Brawl on a Merfolk, I'm laughing. That's amazing for me. Or if they have to use like a little Sisu or whatever. And the reason why I want this to happen is that there's either 2 choices. You can challenge my Cursed Merfolk, and then you discard a card from your hand, or you would have to use up some of your removal, like a Storm, for example, to clear the Merfolk so that you don't have to discard a card from your hand. But now that just gives my Ursula Deceiver of All and my Big Diablo extra protection, knowing that you use up one of your removal spells. And so that was a situation I was trying to put people in. And I would not always open the Diablo line. I made my deck very flexible. It looks like it's brain dead aggro, open Merfolk, open Robin Hood, open Diablo, as I had 12 1-drops. But these are very strategically placed. And in my mind, when you're looking at a big tournament like the DLC, 2,000 players, in the first couple rounds, it's not a guarantee that you're going to face a meta deck. You could face hyper aggro, you could face red green, you could face some deck you've never seen in your entire life and you'll probably never see again. And the Robin Hood line absolutely wipes the floor with all those decks. So that was sort of like a safety net for me against the weird and unknown that I was about to face. But the drawback is that a lot of really good players know how to play around the Robin Hood. Either they'll Medusa it, or they'll hit it for 2, and then they'll use a Zeus on it, and they'll clear it with the song so you don't get the card. And so the Robin Hood loses value against better players, but it gains a tremendous amount of value against lesser players, or lack of a better word. And so this gave me a lot of flexibility. And so against the heavy control decks, I could mulligan and open the Merfolk line. Or if I was playing some unknown, bizarre, hyper aggro, weird deck, I can open the Robin Hood line and be safe. And of course, we have the Diablo line, which in my opinion is the strongest opening in the entire game of Lorcana. That is Diablo on 1, look at your opponent's hand. Shift Diablo on 2, and then hopefully if you have a Storm or a Strength, you can take out whatever 1 drop that they played. It's just absolutely broken. And so you don't really need to explain too much of that. But the other reason why I chose to go with the more lower to the ground or more lower to the floor deck with all the 1-drops is that this inherently increased the value of Strength. Now, if you're playing Morphs and Beast and Tinkerbell and all these shift lines or higher cost characters, that decreases the value of Strength. And the basis or the main strategy around my deck was actually, it's an Ursula Deceiver of All deck, where I'm trying to get you to waste your removal on my cheap low-cost characters so that my Ursula Deceiver of All, the 3-drop, can live, and now I can start double singing songs. Because in my opinion, that is just devastating. That's what wins you games, is that when the Ursula Deceiver of All can double sing a Storm. So you're splitting 4 damage on the board and you're drawing 2 cards, or you're doing a double Strength. And by flooding the board with a Merfolk, a 1-drop Robin Hood, maybe you have a normal Ursula Deceiver, then you have the Ursula Deceiver of All, now your Strength is hitting for incredible amounts of damage. And so that was the more strategy that I was going towards. It wasn't the discard route. It was more of bait my opponent's spells out, try to get the Ursula Deceiver of All to live 1 turn, and then just go ham. Now, the other big addition that really powered my deck was Doc. Now, Doc, in my opinion, people will call it like, I don't know, a whole new world light. a small wheel or whatever. It's like it's a little draw engine on its own. It's kind of weird. It's kind of strange, but I think it's incredibly powerful. And it's a card that people don't expect, right? All of a sudden, I'll dump my hand, I'll flood the board. I might have like 1 or 2 cards left in my hand. I'll ink one and then bam, dock the other and draw 2. And this caught so many of my opponents off guard the whole weekend because people just weren't used to seeing that. They weren't used to seeing the 1/3 dwarf that just discards your hand and draws 2. Now all of a sudden I got draw power, right? And again, by drawing 2, by playing much lower to the ground, I can flood the board and again increase the value of strength, which was kind of like my main strategy around my deck. And that's how I won games. And so most Emerald Steel decks, you win games by putting your opponent in this dungeon, this prison. You chill them, you hypnotize them, you discard their hand down, you Bruno them, and all of a sudden they're in top deck mode. Whereas for me, it was just flooding the board. And if that Ursula Deceiver Vault ever got to double sing Storm or Strength, I had so many small minions to back it up. And then the Petes and the Ursulas to snipe things like Be Prepared and all the big board clear. And I could just win the game from there. Now, one of the very interesting additions that I added, which did an incredible amount of work for me, which is a card that no one saw, was the green Tinkerbell. Now, at face value, it seems like a pretty bad card. It's a 4-cost inkable, 2/3 evasive that gives one of your characters evasive for a turn. However, just the fact of playing the Tink from your hand and giving something evasive, no one sees that coming. And again, I was playing this whole like deception game with the green steel deck, where a lot of the time I found myself with a Pete on board from turn 2, or no, Pete from turn 3, or a Smee from turn 2. So I had a 3/3 body on board. And so often I would face green steel and my opponent would put their Diablo on the Cove. Now Cove is protected from Storm. You can maybe get them with the strength, or also I had Smash, so I could maybe smash the Diablo. However, by teching in 2 green Tinkerbells, there was countless times where my Pete or my Smee was just sitting there, and then on turn 4 I'd ink, drop the Tink, give Pete evasive, and now he's a 3/3 evasive that swings and kills the Diablo in the Cove. And that was just devastating for so many of my opponents. And then after the fact, the Tink, it quests for 2, and it's evasive. So it was very difficult for players to remove. And even when I was facing the red-purple decks and the green-purple decks that had the 2/5 Elsa, like Elsa, it was evasive, it can hit the Tink, but it's a 2/5. So the Tinkerbell even lived through an Elsa. And so many games, I would catch my opponent off guard, give something evasive, clear the Diablo, and then the Tink would just keep questing for 2. And it was just ridiculous. I gave an incredible amount of lore from this card. And so this was the overall deck or list that I ended up taking all the way to top 64. Now I wanted to quickly break down some of my matches so you get an idea of how my tournament went. Now, sadly, during the main event, I didn't really face any hyper aggro or any super quirky decks, so the Robin Hood line was rather underwhelming. I didn't face any green purple or anything bizarre in the first couple rounds. First round, I did face Steel Song, which I drew 1-1. I faced a pretty good player. I believe he got a Chenpo down and a bunch of piglets and other things that I couldn't even get rid of. And so we split there. Round 2, I faced a mirror, green steel, and it was basically whoever went first, open Diablo, they won. Then I went first, open Diablo, I won. It was very uneventful. And so I started off just 2 draws. And round 3, I faced green purple, which I absolutely obliterated. And this was one match where the Doc he was shining. I got a Doc out, drew 2. I think one of the cards was a Storm, played the Storm. I drew another Doc, inked a card, played that Doc, and just the card advantage that was created from just the 2-drop dwarf was insane. And so, yeah, Doc just completely dominated this green-purple matchup in round 3. Ended up getting my first win, so that was a 1-0-2. And then round 4, I faced a red-purple deck. This one was a situation where I got the Diablo line out, and my opponent just couldn't deal with it. Either he finally drew a brawl, but I had Diablo on the Cove, and just kind of nothing really went right for him. He was a super cool guy, and I ended up winning 2-0, so that got me 2-0-2. Now next, round 5, we did face red-blue, and this was where I kind of regretted the Robin Hood line, and I really missed the Flynn Rider line, because by removing Flynn, it made my red-blue matchup a lot worse. But I just didn't see any red-blue at all. So this was the first time I actually got to face one. And it was pretty much the same thing. Whoever went first just completely took control of the game, steamrolled. So we drew, nothing fancy there. So after that, I was 2-0-3. And then round 6, I faced a red-purple deck where I had a chance to 2-0, but ended up losing 20-18. This player, he was really good. I can't remember his name. I think it was Edmund, I think. Super, super good player. We ended up splitting 1-1. I had a tiny chance to squeak out a win, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. And I believe he was running the version with Finders, Keepers, maybe? So that was round 6, and I was sort of in a dilemma. And so I had 2 wins, no losses, and 4 draws. So that's good for 26 points, I believe. And so in the Lorcana DLC, with a 2K field, you want to get 5-0-4. That is a target record that will get you into day 2. If you get 6-2-1, I believe you're kind of on the bubble. So most people, the goal is just win 5, and then you can draw out. And so now after 6 rounds, I was 2-0-4. I had to win out the last 3 rounds for me to make it. And so basically what that means is if there's any loss, if I lose any match at all, my dreams of day 2 are vanquished. And so I really had to lock in and just run it out and win these next 3 rounds. And so round 7 came, and we faced yet again another red-purple, which was nuts. So I was prepping for green steel, and red blue was still the highest played deck, and I just ran into red purples all day long. Faced a guy, I believe the name was Roy, super cool guy. One game, it was pretty much down to the wire, and he sort of made I want to say like a reflex kind of mistake. And when he made it, he knew right away what happened, where he traded his rabbit, which triggered him to draw a card while my Diablo was exerted. So I drew 1 card for free. It was just something simple where normally you would, when you're playing Lorcana, you want to trade your rabbit in, so you draw the card first, so you have that extra information to figure out what to do. That's like a common habit or discipline that you want to have in Lorcana. You want to draw, if there's any cards you can draw them, get all the information, and then make your decisions. But in this situation, because the Diablo was exerted, he really needed to kill the Diablo first and then sack the rabbit, because then it prevents me from drawing a card. And that 1 card allowed me to ink on turn 5 and drop a 5-drop Robin Hood. And that kind of sealed the game for me. And so I ended up, luckily, winning the other game as well, and 2-0'd the red-purple, which got me to 3-0-4. Now, for those of you that don't know, round 8 and round 9 is very tricky territory to navigate, as this is a point in time when you face a lot of players that are in the exact same boat as you, where they have to win out. And so now playing a best of 2 is kind of pointless, and you get into this murky situation of gentlemen's agreements. And the whole idea here is that if me and you are playing and both of us, we just need to win, if we draw, we're just cannibalizing each other. We're both getting eliminated. So no one wins. So it's in our best interest for one of us to win. Now, obviously, you can't just say, okay, let's play a game best of 1. It's against the rules. Ravensburger and the people at the DLC were very clear on this. And you had to navigate this. It was a very tricky situation, because anyone could just go back on their word. in a gentleman's agreement. They could lose the first game, and they're supposed to concede the game to you, quote unquote, but they say no, and we're playing another, and that has happened to some people. And so I went through the tricky dialogue of saying something along the lines of mentioning that I was tired, I had a long day, and that if I lose game 1, I'm probably more than likely just going to concede game 2. And I was just kind of talking out loud. And then hopefully your opponent kind of gets the gist of what you're saying, and they're honorable to their word. And so, as I would, shake their hand, say good luck, and I just kind of would whisper to them under my breath, like, you have my word, type of thing. And it's something it's tough. It's really tricky to navigate, but like I said, it's in your best interest to do it, because if you draw, you both lose, and both of you are not making day 2. So round 8 started, faced a super cool guy. We were talking a lot. We were sort of feeling each other out, sort of, before the match was started, and we quickly both realized we had the same idea, same intention. And so we basically were under the impression of, gentleman's agreement is on the table. And we went super late with game 1. I think it went well over 30 minutes. It was a barn burner, for a lack of a better word. And I just barely squeaked it out, as he had, I believe, 2 cards in hand at the end, and both of them were finders keepers when he needed an answer to my board. And so I was lucky enough to win that game, which was round 8, which got me to 4-0-4, and moving me to round 9, where again, need to get into this whole gentleman's agreement territory and win. And so, interestingly enough, in round 9, I faced a mirror. And I faced a super cool guy. I believe his name was Justin E, I think that was his melee name. Super cool guy. We were just, kind of chatting, we were laughing, we're talking about, like, oh man, here we go, we have the same record, huh? Yeah, going through the whole spiel, the whole talk, while there's judges right there. And so the other hard thing is that other players can report you to the judge as well. So you have to be very careful with your choice of words. And so again, I was just kind of feeling him out, just talking to him, seeing what kind of vibe he had. And this guy was just super cool, super chill. And I was like, again, shook his hand, wished him luck, and I said, you have my word, type of thing, without mentioning what my word was for. But yeah, basically I was good for it. If I lost, I would have conceded, no problem. And I felt a little bad in this match in round 9, because not only did I win the die roll, I drew the absolute stone nuts. Meaning I drew Diablo on 1 with the big Diablo shift line with an action to shift, and I had a storm. So I played Diablo on 1, turn 2, shift the big Diablo, sing the storm to clear out his Diablo, and then on 3 I followed it up with, I had Pete, I had Cove, I had just everything. I had the stone nuts, and the game was done in maybe 5 minutes or so. And this guy Justin was super cool, super honorable guy. Congratulated me, shook my hand, wished me well, and it was just a pleasure to play with someone like that. And so hopefully in a future DLC I can maybe run into him again. That'd be super cool. And yeah, he was just awesome. And because of that luck, I was able to go 5-0-4, completing the last 3-round sweep, winning out, and making it into day 2 as, I believe, I think it was the 48th seed or 49th seed or something like that. And yeah, and this was the deck that got me there. Now, in terms of the actual deck in and of itself, the Robin Hood line was the card that underperformed the most. And then I'd say the Doc and the Tinkerbell are the cards that overperformed the most. Also, the Smash was another card that caught a lot of people off guard, because it's not something that most green steel decks play. And so, again, it was putting the Diablo on the Cove, and you think you're safe, but all of a sudden, bam, Smash. I clear the Diablo. Or the same thing with the Tinkerbell, right? Give something evasive, clear the Diablo. And that was just so devastating in so many of my games. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's the green steel deck that I ran for the Disney Lorcana Challenge in Seattle. I had a blast. Oh, yeah, also, let's quickly talk about day two, as my day two didn't last very long. I faced a red-blue deck. So again, my choice with the Robin Hood line came back to bite me, as I wish I didn't run it, but maybe I wouldn't have got there if I did. And I had the whole Flynn Rider line that I could have opened, which I wish I would have probably done a lot better. So against the red-blue, he was a higher seed. He went first. Super good player. Can't remember his name. Started with a J, I think. But he won game one. I won game two. And then game three, I think we both kind of bricked. I remember I mulliganed 6, and I was just looking for like Merfolk, Diablo, anything. And I got one Merfolk and a bunch of uninkable garbage. But I also remember that he started off super slow as well. So I think both of us bricked pretty hard, and the game just got drawn out. But then again, a longer drawn out game is to the advantage of a blue-red deck, especially when the green steel is a lot lower to the floor like mine. And so I think I ended up getting to maybe, I think it was like 17 lore or something. But then he had Tamatoa on board, he had Medusa, he had Tala, he had Dime, he had just everything. And so it was pretty much over. There was no way I was going to get that extra three lore. There was just way too much removal. And even if there was a desperate situation where he didn't have a Medusa, or he didn't have a big Sisu, or he didn't have a Brawl, I believe he still ran B prep, so that was in the cards as well. And I unfortunately lost in the round of 64, 2-1 against Red Blue, which was still good enough to get me the Let It Go and the Cinderella. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Had an awesome time at the DLC, as this is actually my first one, as I was on the waiting list for Vegas, I was on the waiting list for Toronto, which was super, super annoying. So I was finally able to go to my first one and, brought my own deck that I made, and was lucky enough and fortunate enough to make day two and win some cool prizes. So that's pretty much it for me. Let me know in the comment section down below if you guys do enjoy this type of content when it comes to more strategies and decks that I play, as originally this channel was just for box breaking, as I love to rip packs. But as time has gone on, I really enjoy the whole strategic aspect behind the Disney Lorcana game, and these whole DLC competitive events are amazing. And so I plan on playing many more in the future. So do let me know again in the comment section down below if you do enjoy this type of content. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button if you want to find out when my next upload is. So that's it from me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.